fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Wrong voices equals wrong choices. Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, Salt Strong Unchurched. We are back. Got a confession to make. I skipped church last week. I was tired. We had been all over the place. We've been doing a lot. Went glamping all last weekend. Still hadn't caught up. It was one of those, it felt like a full moon week last week. So many things went just wrong and out of whack. It was almost like, what the heck is going on here, God? And I can't complain because I would be a hypocrite, because if you listen to the prior podcast, I talked all about becoming a better swimmer and not just praying for calmer waters. So I am working on becoming a better swimmer, but last week was just nuts. And our whole family was like, all right, let's just take a break. And so when I do that, I listen to things like Salt Strong Unchurched. I listen usually to one or two different services. One that always comes up, it's kind of my catch-all, just the kind of generic church, if you will. I don't want to call it generic. That sounds horrible. I'm sorry, Joel Osteen, if you're listening to this, but it's Joel Osteen. I do like his messages overall. And I always find myself, I'll be doing yard work outside and just have the headphones in and listen to him. And he came up with this term, I believe it was last weekend. It was called Wrong Voices, Wrong Choices. And he had some really, really fascinating stories in there. And I always try to put myself into his shoes. Maybe you're doing that even with me, as I'm telling stories, and you're putting yourself yourself into my shoes and saying, hey, man, maybe I've done that before. And so Joel's telling stories, some from the Bible, some personal, about different times where the biblical figures or himself had listened to his friends or listened to someone other than God and went with that recommendation or whatever, and ended up being a horrible, horrible idea, meaning wrong voices, meaning the voices not from God, and ends up being wrong choices. And even talked about, the people you surround yourself with. And you've probably heard the saying that, you are the average of your 5 closest friends, the people that you spend the most time with. And that's the average of everything. That's intellect. That's the average of probably how many books you read. That's the average of how long you've been married. It's the average of how much money you make, how much money your assets. I mean, it's pretty wild how accurate that is for most people. Now, there's some people who are making a leap and changing. Maybe they're sick and tired of the people they're hanging around and just have had enough, right? Maybe you're hanging around people that are making a lot of really bad choices and say, all right, I'm out of here. I got to find some new friends. So in that case, it might not be the same for you because you're in a transition. But for most people, that is very, very true. And I started thinking back to my past. Oh boy. So the first one that came to mind, in college at Georgia Tech, I had a roommate, and I will not mention his name because I truly do love the guy, but he had a filthy mouth and was very negative. And I don't know why, still thinking about it. And still to this day, kind of filthy mouth and just kind of negative tint on life, if you will. And I really liked him and liked hanging out with him and spent a lot of time with him. Once again, you kind of become the average of the people you're hanging out with. And I still remember it. I hadn't seen my parents in a while. So my parents were in Florida. I'm up at Georgia Tech in Atlanta, and they came to see me for a weekend. And I remember the first night we went out to dinner. We went, if you guys are familiar with downtown Atlanta there near 14th Street where I lived, there's Rocky Mountain Pizza on Hemp Hill and 10th and 14th around there. And we went to Rocky Mountain Pizza and had some pizza and beer as one of my college hangouts. And I was cursing up a storm. And I still remember it vividly because I just remember my mom and dad, they were probably inside fuming, didn't say a word until I think I just took it a little too far, but I could tell they were not impressed. And I've been used to cursing a lot in college and thinking, oh, this is impressing everyone, right? In college, you're just kind of figuring out. And I was impressed that my friend could curse so much and did it in a cool way. Oh, I just said his name. Sorry, buddy. They did it in a cool way. And even some of his negative things where he just kind of cut down on people and cut down on everything. It was in, at least in my opinion, in the cool way. And I remember my parents just looking at me, and finally, my mom said something first. She's always the one to say something, and she's like, "Joe, I don't know what's happened, but you're a lot different than you were last time." And it kind of took me a while to sink in. I still don't know exactly what she meant, and she's like, "I just feel like you're just kind of super negative on everything and just condescending." And the opposite of how we left you and saw you last time. We were just a fun, loving person. And two, you got a horrible mouth. What happened? And, like we've talked about before, this whole proving and hiding, I went right into proving mode and hiding. Oh no, whatever. And, just trying to talk my way out of it. And, it was wild, right? I mean, that was a couple decades ago when that happened. I still remember where we were sitting. I remember all of it just very vividly. And that was something that stuck with me. Someone that you really love, tells you something like that I couldn't see at the time because it was just around me all the time. It was the person I lived with. It was my roommate who was constantly cursing and constantly kind of negative and condescending. And I just started slowly, almost kind of naturally doing it. It wasn't like I just made a choice one day to say, oh man, I'm going to be condescending and negative and curse all the time. It just kind of happened like one day. Same thing that happens with families and relationships. You wake up and it's like, oh man, what happened? It's usually a bunch of small little things. It's a bunch of wrong little voices that lead to sometimes some wrong choices. And man, that one just stuck with me, forever. And so I would, with that first story, I got another one here. I would just challenge you to really inspect the people that you're hanging out with. And for me, it's something that I've told you I've struggled with, even on the alcohol side of things, right? And the people I hung out with in college, guess what? We're a bunch of big drinkers. And there's been some that I've had to kind of slowly push away out of my life. I still call them friends. I still pray over them. I still love them. If I see them out, I'll still hang out. I'll still have a beer with them, but I'm not going to stay out till 1 or 2 in the morning and do that like I used to do, right? It's that choice you have to make. Do I want this to be my best friend, or do I just want it to be a friend who I sometimes see every once in a while when I run into them? That's tough, right? It's tough to make those choices. But if we all know that these wrong voices, like, hey, Joe, man, let's go out and go to this bar or whatever, that's a choice I have to make. And many times, if you've been there before, most good things don't happen at 1 and 2 in the morning with alcohol. That was a choice I personally had to make, to cut that part and cut even some of those friends out of my life, as hard as it was. And once again, I shouldn't say that, not out of my life, but out of my more daily life, of the people who I'm really spending time with, really surrounding myself with. And like I said, I still love my friend who I exposed his name there accidentally. And I hang out with him occasionally, once every 5 years, if he happens to be in town or shoots me a message, tell him happy birthday. But other than that, I don't spend that much time with him. The other story, I will not say this person's name either, so don't let me do it. Oh my gosh. The other person, it was my very first job. And so I'm the young guy, and I'm the new guy. So I'm, 22 years old, and I'm the new guy. And it was pretty much just all dudes at this very first job I had. And this was a time when, people were having phones and, realizing the power of the internet is all I will say. And there was this one guy in particular was kind of the ringleader, all looked up to, ex athlete, he was a cool dude, if you will, like a guy's guy. And man, he was just, one, had a filthy mouth, but two, was just constantly sending inappropriate pictures of girls. You can use the P word, like PORN, porn. It just, sending really, really bad stuff and constantly looking at it, constantly forwarding the emails, right, to all the guys. And, at the time I knew it was wrong. And I was like, man, it was my very first job. So put yourself in my shoes. I'm like, man, is this just what happens in corporate America? Everyone's just sending porn around. And I just started becoming immune to it. And then I would, next thing you know, months go by and I'll send stuff out. And now I'm kind of one of the funny guys in this string. And gosh, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I do remember kind of having just that wake up call. And it might've been a sermon that I heard at the time or something just about the negativities of porn and how addicting it is. And I was like, man, I just don't want to be a part of that anymore. And the irony is this guy, the more I got to meet him, has a wife and ironically 2 daughters. And it's just like, whoa. And I'm seeing I'm the young guy and I was just like, wow, this isn't normal. I hope it's not normal. Right. And, I can probably tell you where this leads. I ended up not working there and, found out shortly later that this guy, was ended up going through a nasty divorce, probably because he didn't really respect women all that much based on his actions. And, but it was one of those things, like it happened so fast where I went from being like kind of appalled, disgusted, and just shocked to all of a sudden seeing it every day and getting these emails every day and messages every day that it just kind of became, oh, that's just natural. That's what we do. And we send inappropriate messages like this. Once again, wrong voices, wrong choices. And it's wild. The more I thought about that message from Joel Osteen and thinking through like stories like this, that how many times I've been in situations where I'm around people that might have a slightly wrong voice, or that could be a negative attitude. It could be things like inappropriate pictures, etc. That I start now making wrong choices, things that I know God's probably looking down, shaking his head. My parents were, right? My own parents certainly were in that one example. The second one, now, if they're listening, probably know about it, but at the time didn't know about it. I wasn't, out there, putting it on my Facebook page or anything. But man, it's just wild how quickly we can go down a slippery slope, just being around the wrong people. And so my real challenge to you this week is to really inspect who you hang around, and I'm not talking about, just because someone curses, you can't be around them, but really inspect. Hey, do I want to be the average of these few people that I'm hanging out with? Is there a way to up my my level, if you will, by maybe hanging around some other friends who might be a better influence, who might be a little bit more godly, who might go to church more often, who might really exemplify great parents or grandparents or whatever it is. I look at my own parents, if they are listening to this, have done just such a good job. And at the time I didn't get this because, I remember being 18, 20 and getting interested in girls and having some real girlfriends. And even as I got closer to marriage and I'm talking to my parents, it's like, hey, about like, when I have a wedding, like, my best man, they're gonna be my best friend forever. And I'm like, what about you, Dad? And my dad's like, and he's got his old wedding picture. I can still see it. He's got his white tux top. And he's like, yeah, that's actually my best man. I was like, I don't even think I ever met him. I was like, is he still alive? And he's like, yeah, he's still alive. And like almost everyone at my dad's wedding party, with the exception of I think one person, I've never even met. So think about that. At the time, my parents got married pretty young, like a lot of people, did back then. And these were the people they were around, the drinking buddies, the party buddies. And as my parents realized, hey, that's not who we want to be as parents. And that's not who we want to be as Christians. That's not who we want to be in this next chapter of our life. And they slowly started disassociating themselves with those people to the point we never even met them. I never met my dad's best man in his wedding. It was that bad of a wrong voice, if you will, in my dad's life. And the same with my mom. There was, some of her friends that are great friends maybe through college and even after, that were maybe just not the best voices and the best influences. And, you slowly have to start kind of plucking those people out of your life, if you will, in the nicest way possible. But that was a shocking moment for me when I was like, Dad, what do you mean? Your best man? Like, you just stop talking to him one day? And my dad explained it the same way. He's like, yeah, it kind of happened naturally over time, where I didn't want to do the same stuff that he just wanted to do constantly. And I'm trying to be a great dad and a great husband, and that person wasn't. And, we just slowly kind of went our own ways. We're still friends. I still bail him out of jail if he called me was in trouble, but it not someone I want you guys necessarily hanging around with. And that was another one that just stuck with me. I was like, wow, that's really, really interesting, because I think most 18, 20-year-olds, you just assume you got that best friend who's going to be by your side and they're going to be your BFF forever. And sometimes that does happen, and it's awesome and it's excellent. And they're such an amazing influence, and you guys both can raise each other up, right? But in many times, that's not the case, where someone makes some bad choices because they're listening to the wrong voices, aka just kind of hanging around the wrong people, if you will. So I just wanted to share that with you. It hit me pretty hard as I was there in the yard doing some yard work last Sunday, skipping church, listening to old Joel Osteen. And those few stories in particular just were just screaming out to me. I was like, all right, I gotta share this here on Unchurched. So hope that helps. I hope that it can give you a little bit of perspective, and hopefully just kind of reevaluate. Maybe you're just crushing it, and man, I got the right people in my life, but maybe there's just that one that's kind of dragging you down a little bit that you might need to spend just a little less time with. It doesn't mean you got to delete their phone number and kick them out of your life, but it just means slowly not hang around with as much. It seems weird for me even saying it, because I would have struggled even believing it when I was younger, but now it makes so much sense. And now our best friends, the people that we truly do hang around with all the time, I mean, we couldn't pick better people, just A+ people who are elevating us, and vice versa. I would like to say, as we go through life, and all people who have similar age kids and similar age marriages, etc. It's been really, really neat. So, hope you guys have an amazing, amazing day, an amazing week. And if you're ever curious about a better voice, I would say pray to God, right? That's the ultimate kind of lesson here. Is there's so many different voices and people in our lives. At the end of the day, we can decide to listen to others. We can take feedback from others, and you probably should. I mean, you have to do that in business and everything else. But the best thing you could possibly do is pray to God and listen. And sometimes that's just a gut reaction. Sometimes you literally get a loud message, or it's on a billboard, or whatever it might be. But that is my challenge to you, is evaluate the friends and start praying to God. If there's something that's on your shoulders and just weighing you down, just pray. It's amazing what happens, especially for me when I go outside and don't have any distractions and just pray and listen. I come back feeling so much better every single time I've done it. So love you guys. I will talk to you on the next episode. If you have any thoughts or ideas, hit me up, joe@saltstrong.com.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was